Good afternoon, everyone. As we commence this very important ceremony, we remind you to turn off your mobile phones, please. My name is Caleb Johnson, and I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on Jar country, of which the members and elders of the Dja Dja Wurrung people and their forebears have been custodians for thousands of years and have performed age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation and renewal. I acknowledge their living culture and their unique role in the life of this region. I would also like to pay my respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today.
Thank you, Caleb, for your warm acknowledgement of country. Distinguished guests, visitors, staff and students, we are assembled here today to remember our past students and staff who gave their lives in the fight for freedom and peace. They gave so much for the sake of our future. We honour them today in the tradition of the ANZACs. We would like to welcome you all to our annual ANZAC ceremony at Bendigo Senior Secondary College. I'm Amelia Bailey, and together with Amber Chong, Kieran Noble, Annabelle Bellingham and Annie Claxton, we will be your hosts for the 2021 ANZAC ceremony. A special welcome to our guest speaker for today, Mr. Craig Hancock. We would also like to welcome the President of the Bendigo RSL, Warrant Officer Class 1, Peter Swandale, and all current serving and ex-service personnel. Welcome to City of Greater Bendigo councillors, including Mayor Jennifer Alden, youth councillors, as well as Bendigo Senior Secondary College Council members and our members of Old Gold. We also welcome various members of the Department of Education and Training Career Engagement Support Team. Apologies have been received from the Department of Education and Training Area Director Anne Cuniff and Senior Education Improvement Leader Damien Jenkin, as well as City of Greater Bendigo and Bendigo Senior Secondary College councillors. We would also like to welcome our Australian Navy Cadet and World War I nurses from the Bendigo District RSL reenactment group here with us today, along with the Piper, Helen Dilks.
This is one of the most important days on our college calendar. It gives us all the opportunity to join together as a college community to thank and remember all servicemen and women who have served this great country and given us the freedom and the lifestyle we have become accustomed to. Today, we remember our servicemen and women, not only of the past, but those who continue to serve our country or have died or been disabled in recent conflicts such as Afghanistan and Iraq. For those who would like to, we now invite all students, guests and staff to stand for the New Zealand and Australian national anthems. These will be performed by Jade Cuskerley and Sonny Hannaford and accompanied by Charlie Davis-Tope.
Thank you, Jade, Sonny and Charlie. Please be seated. ANZAC stands for the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps. So why is this day special to Australians? On the morning of the 25th of April 1915, the ANZAC set out to capture the Gallipoli Peninsula in order to open the Dardanelles waterway to the Allied navies. The objective was to capture the Constantinople, which is now known as Istanbul in Turkey. The ANZACs landed on Gallipoli and met fierce resistance from the Ottoman Turkish defenders. Their plan to knock Turkey out of the war quickly became a stalemate, and the campaign dragged on for 8 months. It is for this reason that we remember the ANZACs. I would now like to invite our principal, Mr. Dale Pearce, to come forward and officially welcome the guests and students. Please make him welcome.
Thank you. Can I also commence by acknowledging that we're meeting on Jarrah country, and again acknowledge the members and elders of the Dja Dja Wurrung community and their forebearers and their custodianship of this land for many centuries, and the fact that here on this very hill right in the centre of Bendigo, overlooking the Bendigo Creek, that they've performed age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation and renewal. We acknowledge their living culture and their unique role in the life of the region. I'd like to also welcome our official guests, staff and students. This Sunday, people across Australia will pause to recognise the importance of ANZAC Day. Our college will be represented at Bendigo's official ANZAC Day ceremony, including this year the reading of the ANZAC Requiem and this year's ANZAC Day theme, side by side, the RAAF, protecting our skies for 100 years. But today is our opportunity to celebrate together the enduring spirit of the ANZACs. ANZAC Day holds special significance, not just for families like mine, where my grandfather, as some of you would know, my grandfather fought and was wounded and decorated on the Western Front in the Great War. But for all Australians, I want to thank everyone here for joining us today to recognise what the ANZAC spirit means to Australians. I'd also like to thank everybody who's played a part in the organisation and presentation of today's ceremony. In particular, a thank you to all the people who have come here today to be a part of the official ceremony, those on stage and gathered around, our musicians and instrumental music staff, particularly Ash Bird and Jackie Tolhurst, and you'll see the benefit of their outstanding work as we go through this morning or this afternoon's ceremony. The students involved in the ceremony as presenters and performers, particularly Amelia, Amber, Annie, Annabelle and Kieran, who will lead today's proceedings. I also thank the staff and students who have assisted in setting up for today's ceremony, in particular Kylie Han, Danielle Snowden and Joe Peterson. And it's my great pleasure to hand you back to Annabelle, who will take today's proceedings forward from this point.
Thank you, Dale. We now have Mannix Harrington, Sonny Hannaford, Tom Fleming, Jack Deed and Ethan Murray who will perform I Was Only 19.
In our parade at Plakopanyo, it was a long march from cadets. The 6th Battalion was next to tour, and it was me who drew the card. We did Canagra and shoveled up before we left. And Townsville lined the footpaths as we marched down to the quay. This clipping from the paper shows us young and strong and clean. And there's me in this loud chat with me SLR and greens. God help me. I was only 19. Tell lightning shimmers to the dust and we die. And I've been in and out of the choppers now for months. And we made our tent a home, VB and pin-ups on the lockers, and an Asian orange sunset through the scrub. And can you tell me, doctor, why I still can't get to sleep? And night time's just a jungle dark in a barking M16. What's this rash that comes and goes? Can you tell me what it means? God help me. I was only 19. Generation when each step could mean you lost one or two legs. It was a war within yourself, but you wouldn't let your mates down till they had you dusted off. So you closed your eyes and thought about something else. And somebody out contact and another box swore. We hooked in there for hours and a God almighty roar. And Frankie kicked mine the day the mankind kicked the moon. God help me. He was going home too. I can still see Frankie drinking tinnies in the Grand Hotel on a 36-hour record in Montana. I can still hear Frankie lying screaming in the jungle till the morphine came and killed the bloody road. And the ANZAC legends didn't mention the mud and blood and tears. The stories that my father told me never seemed quite real. I caught some pieces in my back that I didn't even feel. God help me. I was only 19.
Thank you to our musicians for that touching reflection. I am now honoured to introduce the President of the Bendigo District RSL Club Branch, Warrant Officer Class 1, Peter Swandale, who will be sharing an insight to the RSL.
Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge all current serving and ex-service personnel here today. Thank you for your service. ANZAC Day is a day when all Australians unite as a nation to remember the sacrifice made by our servicemen and women during the time of war, conflict and peacekeeping. The guns on the Western Front fell silent in November 1918. It is now over 100 years ago the Great War ended. There is no doubt in the minds of modern Australia the birth of a nation was forged on the shores of Gallipoli and the battlefields of the Western Front. The Great War to end all wars was over. Unfortunately, as history has shown, Australians were again involved in another world war, numerous conflicts and many other peacekeeping operations throughout the world. We pay tribute to this and every ANZAC Day to the 102,000 Australians who gave the supreme sacrifice, whether it would be land, sea or air. The sacrifice of so many has provided Australia with the freedom and peace we enjoy so much today. Today, I stand before you as President of the Bendigo District RSL Sub-Branch. I represent all veterans. The Bendigo District RSL Sub-Branch was originally set up in 1915 by the 1st Wounded Soldiers of Gallipoli to assist war veterans returning from World War I. For many veterans, civilian life was halved and with their families suffered for many years to come. Some never got over it and left this world on their terms. Many veterans felt that their mates were left behind on the battlefields and struggled with the guilt of surviving the war. Today, our purpose of supporting our servicemen and women has remained unchanged since those early days. Of course, assisting veterans, their dependents, and those current serving Defence Force members remains our primary objective. But today, I want to talk about how buying an Australian ANZAC badge can change a veteran's life forever and enable the RSL to achieve its purpose. Over the last 20 years, the Bendigo District RSL sub-branch has invested all the money from the sale of badges into either directly helping the veteran or developing health and wellbeing programs. Over the last 3 years, the Bendigo District RSL has invested a lot of time and money to improving our ability to provide health and wellbeing programs. We now have 3 core programs, along with a long list of supporting programs, including float therapy, pistol shooting, working with horses, gold fossicking, and many others. We also now have a solid framework to ensure that what we say, we do. Our core programs consist of physical activity on a Sunday morning, yoga on Tuesday night, and our Sheds program, which operates 2 days a week. All our health wellbeing programs offer our veterans, both men and women, the opportunity to socialise and learn new skills like looking after yourself through health tips, hands-on skills through carpentry, welding, metalwork and lead lighting, or just strong mental health. All our core programs offer encouragement to all to take an interest in their own health and well-being. Good health is based on many factors, and participating in one of many programs gives a veteran that safe but busy environment. It is an atmosphere of old-fashioned mateship. Another program is the Post-1975 Veterans Central Victoria. This support group brings veterans from post-1975 years like Rwanda, Bougainville, East Timor, Iraq and Afghanistan together to support each other. Key activities like fundraising, social interaction and events assist with the information of welfare entitlements, and peer support is just a small list of the great work done by this team. Unfortunately, our real enemy is veteran suicide. It has been reported that during the period 2001 and 2016, 56 defence personnel died during deployments, and another 373 died by suicide. Veteran men under 30 are committing suicide at double the rate to other Australian men their age. That is a very sad fact and highlights that we have a long way to go as a community, but we need to do more for our veterans to support them and the programs that the Bendigo District RSL sub-branch develops, and is one small way to achieve that. We all need to work together as one for our veterans. To this day, we still have homeless veterans who are sleeping on the streets within Australia, some by choice, for others there is no choice. I welcome the announcement by the Prime Minister of a Royal Commission into the veteran suicide. It has been a long time coming. So when you see those veterans or family members sitting at the supermarkets or shopping centres selling badges, come up, say hello and buy a badge, knowing that your money directly supports those veterans in need. This Sunday, veterans and families will finally join together after 12 months to renew old friendships and remember old mates. For as many of our veterans, the battles aren't over, but old mates and lifetime friendships remain forever. A mixture of pride and gratitude fills the hearts of many of our veterans and defence members as they form up on ANZAC Day to present themselves to families and friends. Here in Bendigo, myself and veterans, past and current serving Defence Force members, will march shoulder to shoulder. Okay, 1.5 metres apart, I suppose. Proudly, we'll be stand together in the dim light of dawn, as the citizens of Bendigo have done for over 100 years, to remember the fallen. I welcome you to attend, to cheer on our local veterans or even family members. I will look for you, lest we forget.
Thank you, Warrant Officer Swandale, for your inspirational words and joining us here today during this busy time of the year. I'm very fortunate to introduce to you today's guest speaker, Mr. Craig Hancock. Craig enlisted into the Australian Army in 2005, Armoured Vehicle Crewman, within the Royal Armoured Australian Corps. Upon completion of initial employment training, he was posted to the Armoured Regiment in Darwin. In 2008, Craig was then posted to B Squadron, 3rd and 4th Cavalry Regiment in Townsville, and returned to 1st Armoured Regiment in 2012. Craig also completed 3 tours of Afghanistan during this time. After sustaining a spinal injury as a result of a roadside bomb attack in Afghanistan, Craig was discharged from the Australian Army in 2015. Craig has since represented Australia at 2 Invictus Games. Along with operational service medals, Craig has been awarded the Chief of the Defence Force Gold Commendation, Meritorious Unit Citation, Special Operations Task Group, and 2021 Australia Day Medallion. Craig now resides in Bendigo with his wife Danita and 4 children, Isabel, Faith, Jonathan and Noah. Please make him welcome Mr. Craig Hancock.
Hello and thank you for having me. I'm delighted and honoured to be a part of your school's pre-ANZAC Day commemorative service. And I'd like to use this opportunity to share with you some of my personal story. ANZAC Day, the 25th of April. It's one of our nation's most important national occasions. It marks the anniversary of the first major military action fought by Australian and New Zealand forces during the First World War. It is an event that has left a powerful legacy and has now become a day where we as a nation come together to commemorate the service and sacrifice of all those who have served this nation. Now, as I stand here today looking out amongst you all, it doesn't seem all that long ago that I was your age and at school. And I know that some of you are probably sitting here thinking to yourselves, you've got better things to do than sit here and listen to some random crap on. But when I think back, I wish someone come and told me some truths about war. For me, at an early age, all I ever wanted to do was to become a soldier. I'd run around in the bush near where I lived, playing armies with my mates, watch heaps of war movies where the good guy never dies, has endless amounts of ammunition, and could run around carrying heaps of kit and never get tired. I was so attracted and interested to all things army. After I completed school, I fulfilled that childhood ambition and I enlisted into the Australian Army. Now, as a young, naive soldier, I would hear stories of courage, endurance, mateship and sacrifice from the past wars. To me, it all had an air of romance about it. Heading off with your mates, fighting for your country, good versus evil. Every soldier wanted to deploy on operations, myself included. I thought I knew what war was, but I later came to find out what war is. War is a nightmare. War is awful. War is devastating and evil. War is hell. War is a brutal teacher, and it will teach you lessons you will never forget. In war, you're forced to see humanity at its absolute worst, but you're also blessed to see humanity in some of its most beautiful moments. War teaches you about mateship, honour and humility. War teaches you about pain, sorrow and loss. And it teaches you the preciousness of life. And in learning the preciousness of life, it teaches you about death. The war I came to know was in Afghanistan, a place where violence is coordinated by insurgents. It is a harsh, ancient, arid landscape where the near impossible to detect IED grew to become the ever-invisible enemy's indiscriminate weapon of choice. It's where children play and families live amongst it all. For me, my first real lesson of war came upon my very first patrol in Afghanistan. Whilst on this patrol, one of their vehicles in the patrol was struck by an improvised explosive device, an IED, or a bomb for a better term. The result was 3 seriously wounded and 1 killed in action. Welcome to Afghanistan. Welcome to my first lesson of war. The romantic notion I had developed in my mind leading up to this point of what I thought war was completely shattered and replaced by the harsh realities. My next hard lesson of war came not too long after my first. Whilst on a night patrol to clear the Taliban from an area, this just so happened to be the same area we lost our warrior brother previously, the Bushmaster vehicle I was operating was struck by an IED, injuring 3 more of our team and myself. Now, after seeing my mates hurt, I immediately disregarded my pain and moved into a position to provide security for the patrol first aiders from a likely enemy attack, which at the time would normally follow an IED strike. Now, as if this night couldn't get any worse, while carrying one of my wounded mates to the helicopter landing zone for the casualty evacuation, the helicopter that was sent in to collect the casualties crashed directly on top of us, destroyed the helicopter, injured more personnel, and nearly killed all of us on the ground. Now, low on manpower, I made a decision that I would carry for many years. A decision most, if not all soldiers, would have made in the same situation. That was to hide my injury and the level of pain I was in, all in an attempt to stay with my mates. I did not want to fail them. So I hid my pain and completed my tour of duty in Afghanistan, and I continued to serve in the army while still hiding my injuries, and even completed 2 more tours of Afghanistan before being discharged as a result of those injuries. But after returning to Australia from Afghanistan, I didn't feel like I was home. I felt like a foreigner in my own country. This feeling was compounded each time I returned home from Afghanistan. I couldn't understand why people were so consumed by a Facebook status, or by what some celebrity said or wore, or where this level of entitlement is. Where there were schoolgirls just being killed just for wanting to go to school and get an education, or families being completely destroyed by an IED just simply wanting to go to the market. The lessons I had learned in Afghanistan had changed me. Now, these lessons I learned from war are not unique. In fact, these very same lessons and many more have been learnt by soldiers throughout time. And it is these shared lessons that connects veterans through the generations. Now, as a veteran, there is a long line of servicemen and women that connect me to those that stormed the shores of Gallipoli over 100 years ago. The line is formed by the names of Vils Bretner, Beersheba, Passchendaele, Poziere, Tobruk, El Alamein, Kokoda, Kap Yong, Long Tan, Timor, Iraq and Afghanistan. And it is made whole by 102,917 fellow Australians who have made the ultimate sacrifice for this nation. Let's just stop and think about that number for a second. 102,917. As a young, naive kid, full of innocence and ignorance, I could not fully understand what level of sacrifice that number represented and what hurt and pain the families must feel. But now, as a veteran, and after going through some of these lessons of war, the sacrifice made by 102,917 is no longer a number. It's no longer a faceless, emotionless, disconnected number. It is a level of sacrifice that is hard and heavy felt by all who have experienced the hard lessons of war. But that number does not truly represent the level of sacrifice made by those who have served. There are the countless others who have survived the war, but not the peace. Then there are those who carry the visible and invisible scars of war, for the rest of their lives. Let that sacrifice be brought into the light and not fade to a distant memory, but be a constant reminder of what has been paid for to live the life we live in this country. So on Anzac Day, pause and think of those who have served and sacrificed for this country. Let that sacrifice not be taken for granted, ever. As we grow as a nation, but more importantly, as you, our nation's future leaders, grow, lest we forget.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock. All of the guests here thoroughly appreciate you sharing your story. We would now like to welcome Charlie Davis-Tope to perform his very moving original piece, Buried for Australia. This war hero's story is not only about the trauma he experienced fighting at war, but also the compounding trauma he endured upon returning to Australia, where he was denied his diggers' rights and fundamental human rights as an Australian citizen because of his Aboriginality. Such policies impacted greatly on the health and the well-being of the first Australian returned soldiers and their families. We encourage all guests to listen very carefully to the words as Charlie performs.
The shaking town drunkard, his eyes show a half-dead person, but no one will go to your funeral, not for someone like you. I offered him my own Bible right off my own shelf, but before he can take it, he must help himself. But the addictions he's created and the color of his skin makes it impossible to win. And I'll never forget what the letters they told me. 3 days buried by German shells. Said he should have died for the idea called Australia. It's better than a living in a hell. The stars are his roof and the bridges where he sleeps. I offered him the church, but he denies the warmer keep. He mumbles to himself he doesn't belong. I try to tell him I think that he's wrong, but the walls, they haunt him like ghosts of his friends. I try to tell him that they're in heaven, but then he reminds me the color of his skin. He says they won't let him in. And I'll never forget what the letters they told me. 3 days buried by German shells. Said he should have died for the idea called Australia. It's better than a living in a hell. I turn to the bottle, no even home waddle. Nothing can comfort him now. And I stand by the grave all by myself and read out a prayer to the Lord. He didn't help this world, but this world didn't help him. Sacrifice this country could afford. But then I opened the letters to find we didn't even know this old town drunkard was a war hero. He won for his country, but not for himself. The judging eyes must have been worse than gunshots. And I'll never forget what the letters they told me. 3 days buried by German shells. Said he should have died for the idea called Australia. It's better than a living in a hell. I turn to the bottle, no even home waddle. Nothing can comfort him now. Nothing can comfort comfort him now. Nothing can comfort him now.
Thank you to Charlie for that moving reflection depicting the sacrifice that many Aboriginal men and women made for Australia. We will shortly ask you to stand whilst the ode is recited. The ode is the fourth verse of Lawrence Bignon's poem For the Fallen and is traditionally included in ANZAC services. The words, "Lest we forget," are not part of the poem, but rather a response to the beautiful, thought-provoking words. When you hear the words, "We will remember them," please respond with, "Lest we forget." The last post is the trumpet or bugle call sounded in the barracks and other military installations at 10 p.m. each night to mark the end of the day's activities. It is also sounded at military funerals and commemorative services to indicate that the Soldiers' Day has drawn to a close. Bendigo Senior Secondary College student Ethan Tutor will play the last post at our ceremony today. Silence for 1 minute is included in the ANZAC ceremony as a sign of respect. It offers a time of reflection on the significance of the ceremony. We ask that you please observe silence during this time. Observation of the minute silence first occurred in Adelaide at 9 a.m. in 1916 on the first anniversary of the landing on Gallipoli. After 1 minute's silence, the flag is raised from half-mast to the masthead as the rouse is sounded. When the rouse begins, we ask that you raise your head and look towards the stage for the raising of the flag. Traditionally, the rouse called the soldiers to arise, ready to fight another day. I now ask everyone to please stand for the ode. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them, lest we forget.
Thank you. Please be seated. We now give thanks to all those who have served and continue to serve in this great country of ours. We are particularly thankful for the enduring spirit of ANZACs that continues today, in times of hardship such as droughts, cyclones, floods, and bushfires. Today, as we stand safe and free, clothed with the privileges and rights of free citizens, we give thanks and remember the ANZACs who gave so much. We also remember the students and staff who once attended Bendigo High School and who sacrificed their lives for our freedom. We give thanks, we honour them, and we will not forget.
World War I impacted heavily on the school community, and it was later said, the victory has been dearly bought, and the bitter price paid by our oldest Bendigo families for the boon of liberty. We lost a large number of men and women in World War II and again in World War I. In 1942, the Men's Auxiliary dug trenches around the school for the protection of the students and staff. Mr. F. Smith, Bendigo High Headmaster, in 1945 said, "The school's loss is a nation's loss, for these young men who had given all had so much to give." In 1956, they began construction of the memorial steps. We traditionally lead a ceremonial walk up the memorial steps at the front of the school. The memorial steps were dedicated in 1957 as a memorial to those members of the school who served and suffered that our way of life may be preserved.
It is a tradition of the college that each year the student body walks up the steps as a gesture of respect in commemoration of the fallen. The plaque at the bottom of the steps reads, "This memorial is erected to remember all who passed this way, of those who served and suffered that our way of life might be preserved."
We will shortly invite the student body and staff to join the President of the RSL, Warrant Officer Peter Swandale, Bendigo Senior Secondary Principal Dale Pearce and Mr. Craig Hancock in the ceremonial walk. If you are unable to join in today, please consider this when you next walk up the front steps of our college. We would like to thank all our veterans and especially our guests for their attendance here today and invite them to join our student leadership team members for a light luncheon in the conference room shortly after. Thank you to the Piper, along with our cadet and nurses who will lead the ceremonial walk. We would also like to thank Ash Bird, Jackie Tolhurst and the 2021 music students for their wonderful performances here today.
Our final item for this service will be when the war is over. As you leave the theatre, the names of the veterans who lost their lives in World War II for country from Bendigo will be shown on the screen. We ask that the students seated in the theatre remain seated until veterans and guests leave for the procession and follow promptly once the distinguished guests have exited the theatre. For the students and staff wishing to join in the ceremonial walk, please follow our special guests and quietly make your way up the college memorial steps. Please remain seated until you are directed by a student leadership team member or a staff member for your area to exit. Special guests who are unable to make this walk today, please remain seated and a student leadership team member will direct you to the conference room. Thank you all for your attendance and participation in this important ceremony today. Lest we forget.
When the war is over, got to get
each other's shoulder. Still so young, but some miles on my shoulder. How can I go home and not get blown